Hey Gear Seekers, I'm Nick. The Meshify C from Fractal is probably one of my favorite cases ever made. It's small, it's obviously compact, that's what the C stands for in Meshify C, and it has great airflow. This is the Meshify 2 Compact, the follow-up to that. Let's see if this lives up to my expectations of the original Meshify C. We're gonna pull it apart, we're gonna do a build, we're gonna test thermals, we're gonna do all of that. So let's get into it. We've got a little helper cat today. We've got Bindi. You reckon Bindi gonna give me a hand? Okay. All right, let's start off with panel removal with our special guest, Bindi. She's decided she wants to hang out on the table while I do this. So the side panels just pop off. It's much like the other Meshify 2, the XL that we already covered. I'll put that in the top right-hand corner right now. This is basically a shrunken down version of that. So it's got like a little hinged panel at the bottom. It just lifts up when you pop off the little clips. The case uses these little plastic knobs here, so it doesn't need screws to attach the side panels, and it basically just pops on and off really easily. I like this, and a lot of cases have started to use this, and I can get behind that. The back panel is the same as the glass TG panel. This is the dark TG version of the case, by the way. There is a non-dark TG version and a solid panel side, but I wanted this one, so I got this one. With these new Fractal cases, the front panel removal is optional because if you pull along the Fractal logo on the front, it actually pops the front of the case open, revealing two of the pre-installed 140mm fans, which I'm going to come back to in a moment. And also, the top of the case is removable too. It's got a little indent here, and you just push up on it, and the top of the case pops off. This is basically exactly the same method that the XL uses as well. So it looks like they've adopted this across the board. The accessory kit for the case is in the bottom here in one of the hard drive sleds. These have captive thumb screws. You just loosen them up, they don't fall out. And here it is, just a little box of accessories. This is just the standard stuff, probably not that interesting to most people. Basically every case has this stuff. It's got a bunch of tweezers, screws, and all the rest of it. I'm gonna leave this out because, yeah, we're gonna be building with this thing. While we're on the topic of this cage, so you can put two mechanical 3.5-inch spinning rush drives in the bottom if you like. Both sleds are removable. They're just captive thumb screws. Both of these sleds slide out quite easily. And the whole cage can also be removed as well if you wanted to use a bigger power supply. There's also two additional SSD mounts on the back here of the motherboard tray. You can remove these as well with thumb screws, pretty standard stuff. And these can also be mounted on the inside of the case as well, with two additional spots on the inside here. We're not going to be showing this because we don't have additional sleds, but you can do 6 drives in total if that's what you wanted to do. Front panel connectors are all your usual suspects. You've got your USB Type-C front panel connector, USB 3.0 or 3.2, and front panel audio as well. There's also the connectors for your switches and your lights up the front as well, all standard stuff. There's 3 pre-installed fans in this case. There's 2 140mm fans up the front and a 120 up the back. They're DC powered, they're not PWM, so they do use a 3-pin fan connector. This is just to basically save money. In terms of power supply support, 165mm maximum length if you have this cage installed. If you remove the cage, it increases that limit to a much higher size of power supply, which I suspect a lot of people actually begin to remove these as SSDs are becoming a lot more popular, and most people that I think will probably use these to mount their SSDs. Some people will use this, so it is nice that it's included, but yeah, your power supply limitation with this cage is 165mm. For the build that we're going to be doing though, I think I'll be removing this cage and I'll be leaving it out of here permanently. Continuing with all things power supply, it uses these handy dandy little brackets to mount the power supply so you can slide it in the back, so you don't have to worry about jamming it in through the side. That's what she said. And yeah, 2 thumb screws, mounts to this bracket, slide the power supply in, and fasten these 2 screws, and Bob's your uncle. In terms of motherboard support, you can go from ITX all the way up to ATX, not eATX, because these cases typically have this here. It changes the elevation, so it limits your motherboard size Not a huge deal. I don't think many people would be trying to use eATX with this anyway. I bet you could probably make it fit if you really, really wanted to. There's also the center peg for the motherboard, which holds the board in place if you're either installing upright or helping you to orient the board in the correct place as well. I like that these are getting bigger and bigger over time, reducing the need to use that middle screw on the motherboard. I like this. This can be a problem with some motherboards, some higher end ones where you can't fasten the screw up. So this is actually nice to have this here for a bit of extra support. And while we're on the topic of things fitting in here, let's talk about GPU length and support. The maximum GPU length without the front fans is about 360 millimeters. With the front fans installed, you're looking at 341 millimeters. With the front rad, you're probably going to be reducing that by an additional 25 millimeters. So for this build that we're doing, we're going to be using a top-mounted radiator just so we can use a bigger GPU to show how you can fill out the case. But yeah, I would be very mindful of your radiator placement if you were to do a front mounted radiator and the length of your GPU. And if you're wanting to know how long this GPU is, it's 323 millimeters. Some other features in this area of the case are the rubber grommets for passing your cables through. I think this is, I mean, it's a must for most cases these days. The design of this one is different to what we've seen before with this zigzag pattern, also making it a bit cleaner to pass cables through. The grommets are also down here as well, using the more traditional pattern, but still nice to have a grommet down the bottom as well. They've also adopted this blanking plate system that they had on the Meshify 2 XL that I use for my editing PC. Plastic little panels that just pop up. Oh, that was a bit of force, but they just pop up and they're in different sizes depending on what you're doing here. And you can only really install them in the order that they're in this case here. And just another thing to note as well, if you're doing 3 120mm fans up the front or a 360mm radiator, you will need to remove this front panel because it's in two sections here. Otherwise, you can just leave it in if you're doing a 280 or 240 up the front, no big deal at all. As I showed a little bit earlier in the video, the front panel opens up. You can actually remove this if you really want, but it can be opened up and the dust filter is built into this, so you can remove this to clean it if you must. Also, there's a dust filter at the top of the case, which you just slightly lift up and it pops off. This is again the same as the new Meshify 2 cases as well. The exact same system. I like that this system is now consistent across the board. And lastly, the dust filter for the hole underneath of the case is the same as every other Fractal case you would have seen for years and years and years. It slides out along the bottom of the case. It's the whole length of the case. So yeah, that pops in and out, nice and easy. For fans and radiator support, you can do an up to a 360mm rad up the front or 3 120mm fans if that's your cup of tea. You can also do a 280 at the front, which is kind of the configuration it's in now with the 2 140mm fans up the front. Up top, you can do 2 140mm fans as well, or a 240mm AIO or radiator if that's your cup of tea, and 120mm fans up the back as well. So for a case this size, it's got a lot of cooling potential, and that's one of the things that made the original Meshify C so popular. However, they've made a big change to this case, which I think is one of the best features. I'm gonna show you this right now. The top panel, much like the XL and the regular Meshify 2, can be removed with these two screws. And then you pull that one out and it allows you to remove the entire top of the case. Obviously, don't do what I did and take the filter out first, but now you've got access to the whole top of the case. So if you're building and doing a custom water cooled setup, because you can custom water cool in this, you can actually get access to more parts of the case, and it is nice to build top down as well. And this plate is good if you want to mount your radiator and then place it in the case to test for clearances and stuff as well. When we did the custom water cooled editing PC in the XL, this was one of the most handy things for test fitting because I could literally attach it, pull it out, see where everything was going, and then put it back in. So I like that this has been adopted across the board. Good work to Fractal for doing this. For front panel connectivity, or rather it's becoming top panel in most cases now, you got your headphone and microphone jack, you've got USB Type-C, power button, reset button, and 2 USB 3.0 ports In terms of cable management, it's got these 3 cable raceways pre-installed into the case with these Velcro straps for tying down cables, as well as these additional 3 Velcro tie downs as well. There's additional tie down points all over the rear of the motherboard tray as well, quite a few. The only thing I'm concerned about is the clearance here. Now, the clearance between the side panel and the motherboard tray looks to be, I'm gonna say about 18 to 22 millimeters. I could be wrong, I didn't look it up, but yeah, it could potentially be an issue. However, with the way that the panel mounts, it might actually give additional clearance. We're gonna find this out. We'll talk about this when we actually build in it, because we'll know very quickly if that's the case. There's a lot of similarities between this and the original Meshify C, and what I'm seeing so far I quite like. But there's only one way to find out if this thing is any good. We need to build in it. So let's jump in and do a build. ladies and gents, I hope you enjoyed the build in the Fractal Meshify 2 Compact. All right, let's quickly take a look at the thermals for this system. As you're seeing on screen right now, much like the original Meshify C, the thermals in this case are absolutely excellent. There you go, the thermals are pretty good, as expected. What else did you expect from this case? Every other review of this case has basically showed the same thing up until this point as well from everyone else. So, yep. No surprises there. All right, let's chat about the hardware because yeah, everyone loves the hardware. The CPU is the Ryzen 7 3800X. The reason why I use the 3800X is because I have it available and that's basically it. We put the 3800X on the MSI B550 Tomahawk. The reason why I went with B550 with this motherboard is because of the color of the parts. Everything kind of just went together when I planned it in my head. So yeah, that's why we went that way. To cool the 3800X, we use the NZXT Kraken Z53. We've used this cooler quite a bit lately, and the reason why I keep using it is I just love the screen. The screen's really cool, and I dig it, and I'm just gonna keep using it because it looks sweet. For RAM, we went with 32 gigs of G.Skill Trident Z Neo at 3600 megahertz. The GPU is the MSI Radeon RX 6800 XT Gaming X Trio. This is actually the first time that we've used this GPU in a build, and I wanted to give it a go. And like I said, when I was planning out all the parts, the color scheme suits the motherboard and the rest of the components. So yeah, I actually would have gone a different way with all the colors and everything. If I had black and silver cables that I've got coming from Cable Mod, it would have just looked so sweet and would have just done like a nice white lighting, but yeah. Nothing else I can do about it. I had to do something cool, so here we are, watermelon. Speaking of all the watermelon stuff, we went with 6 Corsair LL fans. Again, I've been using these quite a bit lately because I'm really digging IQ with doing split lighting. It just looks cool, so I'm just gonna keep using it. And for the rest of the parts, if I missed anything, there's a PC part picker list down below in the description so you can see all of the things that we used in this build. Okay, let's chat about the Meshify 2 Compact. I'm just gonna call it the Meshify C2 because it makes more sense to me in my head. With this case, much like the original, it is absolutely awesome to build in. Very, very easy to build in. I'm really digging this new top bracket that allows you to pull the whole top of the case out. When I was building and putting the motherboard in, it just felt like there was lots of room for activities. And yeah, I think they did a fairly decent job with this case in that regard. The front panel that you can swing open and put all the fans in can be completely removed. I forgot that you could actually do that. I didn't show that at the start of the video. That makes it really convenient to actually put the fans in as well. You probably noticed the clip where I was like putting them in and then I was like, hang on, this thing comes off. I totally forgot because I've got like the big boy in my office and that's how I did it when I built that one. If you remember back to what I said at the start of the video, I was a little bit concerned about the space for cable management. Turns out there was nothing to worry about. The cable management is actually pretty good. Lots of tie down points. I actually used some zip ties to secure most of the cables to the back of the case. One thing I didn't account for, you probably noticed in the cable management, is that little loading node core from Corsair. I just kind of let it flap around on the bottom and let it do its thing. But yeah, it all fits. Now there's going to be questions about this GPU support bracket that I use. This is one of the Aorus ones with the extensions on it. It's about half the height that this thing can actually go. And I used it because you can put it in the basement and pass it through so you don't see the foot of the support bracket. So it kind of looks like it's part of the case. And I really dig doing things like that. The truth is with the Meshify 2 Compact, there isn't much to dislike. It's much like the original Meshify C. It's easy to build in, easy to cable manage. It's a really nice size. It's much smaller than most mid-tower cases, being that it's shorter in actual depth, which I like. We need to see more cases like this. I'm gonna do another build in this case. I've actually got a white one on its way as well. That's gonna be pretty sweet. I know you guys have been loving those white builds, so we've got a white build coming pretty soon. And I wanna see if I can do a custom loop in here because unlike the original Meshify C, this feels to me like it would actually be better for water cooling, and water cooling components have come quite a long way since that case came out with flat pump resers that you can fit in the basement and that kind of stuff. Kind of like what I did with the XL, how I hid all the water cooling gear. I could probably do something quite similar in this case as well. If you guys want to see something like that, let me know. I really think I'm going to do a custom loop in here because I can easily fit 2 radiators in here without any problem, and I could probably cool quite a high performance system with this thing too. There's a few other things I have to mention as well about things like RAM clearance. If you're putting a radiator in the top, you need to be aware of how tall your RAM modules are. With the Trident Z Neo, it is the absolute limit for this. If you've got a motherboard that has VRM cooling, that has really huge heat sinks, you might be out of luck getting a top radiator in here, or even fans at the top. But I don't think that having just fans at the top is going to be a massive issue. More towards the side of it not allowing you to fit the actual radiator in the top if it's a 240. Oh, one thing that I filmed a whole section about this, and it was at the start of the video I was supposed to go in there, but the whole section just went on for too long. But I wanted to mention that the feet of this case, they've changed the composite material. Now this is like a really weird thing to nitpick. I know, I get it. But the feet are a different type of rubber that leave marks on any surface when you're sliding the case around, right? The reason why you're not seeing any marks now is because I flipped the case over, I put tape on it, I used a knife and I cut it out so it was perfect. Basically so it didn't mark the table when I was building, because it gets really annoying when you have to clean up the table every time you move something and slide it around. The XL doesn't have these feet. The normal one, the non-XL doesn't have these feet. I don't know why this one has these feet, but it is actually pretty annoying. That's the only thing I can nitpick about this case. But otherwise, this case is a huge recommendation from me. Much like the original Meshify C, I love these cases. The size for me is the best thing. It's the balance between not being too big and being able to jam all of your junk inside it. And that's basically all I've got to say about the Meshify 2 Compact from Fractal. Anyways, guys, yeah, if you like the music, I make all the music. It's available over on Patreon. If you want to get early access to videos like this one, head on over to Floatplane. And yeah, I'm your boy Nick with Gear Seekers. You peek, we seek. I just wanted to mention something else about the channel. Now, people have been getting a little bit confused as to what I've been saying on social media, but YouTube's been unsubscribing paying members and people who've been subscribed to the channel for a very long time for basically no reason at all. So if this has come up in your recommended, or this isn't in your sub box and you're subscribed to the channel, just double check that you're subscribed, because we've got a lot of comments from people saying that YouTube unsubbed them from the channel. And these are from people that I've seen in the comments over the last 3 years who comment on every single video. I'm like, these people have stopped commenting for some reason, because YouTube is unsubbing people and not showing our channel in their sub boxes. Now they've gone out and said, oh, you know, like this isn't a problem. They've said this for years and years. But if you guys are telling us that this is what's happening, this is a problem. So yeah, just make sure that you're subscribed to the channel so you're not missing out on any videos. Yep, I think that's all I got to say. Thanks for watching. Make sure you're subscribed. I don't know why YouTube is doing this. It's freaking me out a bit.